Hey everyone, happy Wednesday to everyone. So thank you so much for coming in to watch this. We obviously have, 22 days or so left before the halving event, which we're getting closer and closer to it, which I think is going to be obviously good news for the miners going forward. But today's going to be pretty short. We only have really Mawson to take a look at. They provided a news release today. We'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at the miners and Bitcoin as well, see what's going on in there today. And then we'll get into the Q&A session for you guys. So it'll be nice, short and sweet. Then maybe we can spend a little bit more time on Q&A session this time around. Okay, but as always, you guys know the drill here. This is not financial advice for entertainment only. Please do your own research. Invest in the following coins and companies for full disclosure. And if you enjoy this type of content, hit the like button, subscribe. Helps me out tremendously. And if there's any corrections to be made, we'll get those out, obviously, to Discord through Patreon, YouTube community posts, and Twitter as well. Okay, and then also the stream is a little bit delayed from what I'm seeing and what you guys are seeing. So when I do the Q&A session, I'm going to be delayed by like 15, maybe 20 seconds or something like that. Okay, so keep that in mind. So I'll get to your questions eventually, but let's take a look at what's going on here with Bitcoin really quick and the miners, and then we'll get into the one story that we do have here and the Q&A session. So right now, Bitcoin obviously was in the red today. It finished out, it was kind of battling in the green a little bit. It was down in the red. It finished out in the red also. It was down 0.8% on the day. It wasn't too bad for a day. We closed at 69,436, which wasn't too bad. And I think we're still going to be trending upwards as we get closer to having it potentially. Right now, we haven't really broken this trend line here, which is a good sign. So we'll see how it goes, right? Miners, on the other hand, there were a couple that did pretty good today. We also had a couple that were down today. It was kind of a mixed day on the miners. We saw Anyone being down. We saw Bit Digital being up 9.65%. Obviously, that is possibly because of the news that came out yesterday with them getting their contract for AI extended to 100 million in revenue per year. Potentially, right? So that's obviously good news there. And then we had Cypher up 2.1%. CORZ was up 4%. Hive was up 2.8%. Marathon had a great day today, 8.29%. Riot was up 1.5%. Stronghold was up 2.9%. And Wolf was up 9.76%. So it looks like maybe Wolf was the one that actually did the best here out of the bunch that we cover here. So we'll see how this continues going forward. Right now, we're still in this kind of rocky place between the halving, right, before the halving and then after the halving event. So I think it's still going to be choppy waters going forward unless Bitcoin really starts ripping a lot higher in price. Okay, but let's take a look at this one story that we do have here, and then we'll get into the Q&A. So Mawson Infrastructure Group expands co-location business, which is great, but it seems like they're concentrating more on the hosting side of the business than they are actually on the self-mining, which is unfortunate. They haven't really provided any news as far as them growing their own self-mining. But basically here, they're increasing their co-location service business by about 5,880 miners, or about 20 megawatts, which is still good, right? They're going to get some revenue from this, but it's still not going to be as great as if for their self-mining. And then if we look at their actual fleet here, if we look at Mawson, what they have here, their fleet, they're currently at about 1.4, 1.5 exahash for self-mining, and their fleet is a little bit older here. That's obviously one of the concerns that we've had with them. They got a bunch of these 90 terahash miners and then the 85 terahash miners as well. So that's been kind of our concern here with Mawson for the last, I would say, probably 9 months or so. And we were thinking that Bitcoin was going to be possibly lower than where it is right now. So I think Bitcoin being where it's at with around 68,000 or so, that is going to be a savior for them going into the halving event, because at that point those miners still should be somewhat profitable. So that's the only thing that's good for them right now, obviously. But we'd definitely love to see them change their machines out for newer machines, but they're not doing that. So it's basically a matter of time before their own self-mining excuse me, might be going under. And the only thing they're going to have left is the hosting side of things, potentially. So they're probably going to squeeze these out as long as they can for the time being, at least, while they're still profitable. Okay, so that's it on Mawson. You guys can let me know what you guys think on that one, and then let's get into the Q&A side of things here. So obviously, like I said, the Q&A is a little bit delayed from what I'm seeing and what you guys are seeing. It's about 15 to 20 seconds or so. So put your questions in there, and then obviously I'll get to them eventually. If I don't get to them right away when you post, give it a little time. I'm trying to catch up on all the Q&As. So let me go back to my screen here where I can see your guys' questions here. And we already have the first question here up. Here we go. So what are your thoughts on some CEOs arguing that there are better products out there to hold BTC, and that by not having a HODL, they minimize dilution? Okay, so we have, obviously, I think you're talking about Paul from Wolf, and you also can say the same thing about the CEOs from IREN. I'm kind of mixed on it. Deep down inside, I think that there is a time to hodl, and there's opportunities to be made with that, right? Especially as you get closer to the halving event, I think that's kind of when you want to hodl, because the only reason the miners are mining Bitcoin is because they believe that the Bitcoin price is going to go up. Well, if you believe the Bitcoin price is going to go up, you would also believe that the Bitcoin price is going to go up, and your hodl is going to increase in value, right? So there's times to sell and times to buy, or not times to buy, time to hodl. Time to hodl is before the halving event, after the halving event a little bit, and then selling in the bull run, right? And might not get it exactly right when you're going to sell it, but at least if you're selling into the bull run and then after the bull run, you're going to get much better gains on that Bitcoin that you hodled before the halving event, a little bit after the halving event as well. So I think there is something to be said on this. And a lot of these guys see themselves as infrastructure plays, energy infrastructure plays or something like that. Okay, that's, yeah, sure. But you're also kind of looking at it like a gold miner, which gold has historically not done well in the last 10, 12 years or something like that, right? So there's no really a reason to hold gold because there's just no such huge price appreciations in it. Based on that, that's where I think things differ a little bit. And I think that's where also the investors are kind of looking at in this space is, can miners hodl a little bit, because they do get that percentage gains on the Bitcoin price going up, especially since they can mine it for a much lower cost, right? So that's kind of the way I see it. Let's see here. So that's kind of that one. Let's see. Let's see here. What's driving Mara up today? I think it's just the sentiment is kind of changing a little bit, right? I think they've been beaten down quite a bit, rightfully so, possibly because of their production issues at their two facilities they've had for 3 months now. And my own view on it is, I wish that they would spend more time on their self-mining operations. People out there, the Mara pigs, argue that, you know, the executives there are not spending or wasting time on the other projects, but I think it still takes up a little bit of their time. I'm not saying it takes up all of their time, but it takes up a little bit of their time, because you got to prepare for these speeches, these presentations, all this other stuff you got to prepare for. And your number one priority should be on the self Bitcoin mining, right? If they have a transformer down, right, that's cost them, you could say, over the last 3 months, potentially around 40 million plus in lost revenue, if not more. Plus, they could have hodled more at that time as well, which obviously is hurting them in that regard as well, because now Bitcoin's price is much higher than where it was just 3 months ago. In the beginning of January, it was around 40,000. So there's a lot of missed opportunities there. Even so, let's just say there was 40 million that they lost all in general. If they went out to manufacturers of one of those transformers and said, hey, we'll pay you, double, triple, whatever that transformer costs, because it's costing us basically, what does that come out to be, like $500,000 a day roughly, right? Something like that, based on what they're not operating. And this is just back of my head math here really quick, right? But you could do the math there and figure out, is it better to maybe overpay something and say, we need this ASAP, we'll double, triple pay for this, because at that point, you're kind of generating the income anyways if you get that transformer replaced, whatever it might be. Okay, that's kind of the way I look at it here on Marathon. Marathon's obviously one of the biggest miners here. They got a lot of things going for them, but they also have a lot of issues with their self-mining, which is obviously the one thing that I keep harping on. So that's just it. Let's see here. Question, IREN or Wolf? I like IREN more because their growth is bigger than Wolf's. Wolf still has debt to pay off, which they're obviously going to have to pay off after the halving event as well. So for that reason, I would say IREN. Let's see. Let's see here. Sebastian, I know your business. I have a request that you can do far better than I, showing a chart of HODL at different price levels, 80, 100. Okay, yeah, we can probably do something like that. And I'm still waiting on a lot of the Q4 results from the miners. Once we get that, we'll start looking at the quarterly results for the miners, and then we'll do some analysis as far as what's their potential for revenue going forward after the halving event, right? As far as where their hash rate is, where their hash rate is going to be. We can do all those things after that. Thoughts on CORZ? CORZ right now is way undervalued, but they're way undervalued because they just got out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy, so that's the reason for it. Could they fetch a lot more? Sure. I think investors are just waiting to see like the first quarter or maybe 2 quarters after they got a Chapter 11 bankruptcy to see how they are doing, right? Whenever a company goes into bankruptcy, it definitely sours the taste of investors. So that's kind of the reason why it's at right now. Let's see here. What are the chances of Cleanspark hitting $50 when BTC hits $100? Well, I mean, we're at 68, 69,000. I mean, that's only what is it going to be an increase of? 50%, right? Roughly 50% of that is about 35,000 or something like that. So you're looking at a 50% increase in Bitcoin price from here. And then that would be almost 120%, something like that for Cleanspark to get to $50. It might be possible. Just depends on how well they can grow to the 20 exahash they're planning to grow by the end of the first half. And then getting to, 30 exahash, I think, by the end of the year or something like that. So if they can continue to grow and grow monthly, I think that might be possible. Let's see here. Price targets for Bitfarms, Spark, Cleanspark, IREN, if Bitcoin hits 100,000 by the end of the year. I mean, it's basically you're looking at 50% increase in Bitcoin. So that's, 0.5x, right? Something like that. Not even 1x, 1.5x. You could say that the miners could go maybe 3x potentially, something like that. That's kind of the way I would look at it. Next question. Do you think Riot or Mara will sell their HODL this cycle? I hope they do, right? I hope they don't hold it all the way through the peak and then hold through the bear market again. Riot was kind of one of the earlier ones to sell between all of them. Cleanspark was really the one that did it overall. But Riot, I think, started selling much faster than Marathon and Hut 8 as well, right? So I hope they do. The CEO with over 35 million shares out says they don't how to minimize dilution. Comical, actually. So you're talking about, obviously, Paul from Wolf. I think the reason that they are so high in shares is not because they diluted so much, but I think it's because that they were they merged with another company in order to get the Wolf symbol. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's kind of the reasoning, I think, for it. So could you elaborate on your opinion regarding Canon? You said they don't follow Bitcoin movement, yet ripped like a madman after last halving. Yes, after last halving, they did, but this time around, we're just not seeing it. At least before the halving cycle. If you look at Bitcoin itself, comparing it, so if you do a comparison on the charts, if you use TradingView or something like that, if you compare Bitcoin over the last year to Canon, Bitcoin's gone way up. Canon actually has gone down, right? Could they actually do well going after the halving? Potentially, but right now they're just not doing that great. Let's see. Okay. Do you think IREN Energy, once done with the ATM, expands to 30 exahash plus AI cloud expansion, making 21 million per year, possibly peak BTC price of 200,000? What is your price prediction at that point? Wow. Well, if they can get to that point, obviously they're going to get there this year in 2024. I think it's going to be possibly 2025 that they would get to 30 exahash. The only question is how fast will Bitcoin run this time around? And will we have a much faster peak than we did the last cycles because of the spot Bitcoin ETFs and things like that? So that's tough to tell. But if they can get to 30 exahash, and let's say Bitcoin does go to 200,000 at the middle of maybe next year sometime or something like that. At that point, I think they should be like at least a 10x, if not more, from where they are right now. It all just depends on how well they can execute and things like that. But it's tough to say. What public miners would go out of business if price remains around 70,000 at halving and transaction fees remain the same? Which miners would benefit the most from some miners going under? Well, right now, it doesn't look like a lot of miners are going to be going under if Bitcoin stays at 70,000, right? If Bitcoin was at like 45, 50,000, then we might have some miners that are going to be obviously in trouble. But with Bitcoin being up where it's at right now at 70,000, it doesn't look like really any of the miners that at least I covered will be in a big hurt. There might be a couple. I think Sphere might be one because of the overhead that they have there. I think I calculated they need to be like at 100-some thousand, but this was based on Q3 results, like 100-some thousand for Bitcoin price to be in order to break even at that point. So they might be a little bit in trouble. And then that's why I'm saying I need to wait for the Q4 results on some of these guys still to come in so I can get at least the most recent data that I have on them to really do some numbers on them. But right now, if Bitcoin's at 70,000, I don't think there's going to be too many miners going out of business. There might be some public or private miners that have older machines. Those might be going under. So, but right now it doesn't look like too many. If Bitcoin price was like 40 or 50,000, at that point you could probably see a much bigger decrease in the network hash rate, which then would benefit the larger miners like Marathon, Riot, Cleanspark, Iris Energy, Bitfarms, possibly Wolf, Cypher, right? Those guys have a little bit bigger hash rates. Those guys could definitely do better at that, benefit from it more or less. Let's see. How many stocks does one have to own percentage-wise in a company to get a share from a profit if the company doesn't give out dividends? That I don't know. That's a good question, but I don't think any of the publicly traded miners, unless they give out dividends, you don't get anything for it, even if you own the shares. The only thing you're getting shares is in the appreciation of the price potentially. But correct me if I'm wrong on that. Let's see here. Hi, Sebastian. I am in on Cypher and would like to add more. Like your opinion, Sebastian, on this concentrated play on BTC. I like Cypher. Cypher's gotten a lot better ever since well, not them, but Bitfury owns a bunch of shares, or at least they did, right? They're down to like 35-40% ownership in Cypher right now. That has gotten much more better diluted as far as one entity owning all the shares, or majority of them, like 70-some%. So I think that's gotten a bunch better for Cypher, and that's why we're seeing Cypher obviously do well. Plus, they provided us with pretty good quarterly results as well for Q4. So I think that's why it's doing really well. They have cheap electricity. And they do have a pretty good growth plan ahead. And so we'll definitely see how they do. Can I cover this already? IREN or Wolf? I said IREN because IREN is going to be growing more, right? Wolf still has the debt to pay off. So they're going to be a little bit more limited to what they can actually buy going forward. I mean, if you guys watched the interview with the CEO, Paul, on was it Mike Nelly, so Bryce and Anthony, you notice that he doesn't want to dilute because he's also a large shareholder in that. I think he owns like 40% of the company or something like that. So he doesn't want to dilute, and if he doesn't want to dilute, that means that he's not really going to be growing, and they're trying to pay off the debt. So that's the reason I would say IREN possibly more than Wolf. When is Corsicana coming online for Riot? Should be soon, is it not? Yes, I believe it should be like within the next couple of weeks, if not at least a month or two, but it should be coming online. We already saw pictures of that happening, where their buildings are pretty much being set, their immersion cooling is being installed, and all those things. So we're getting close. It should be within a couple of weeks, I think. What is your thinking on the likelihood of spot ETF, ETH ETF being approved in time for this bull run? BlackRock, Fidelity, etc., pressuring it to happen, and the recent CFTC saying it's a commodity. Well, yeah, CFTC might be saying it's a commodity, but you also have to look at the SEC, right? The SEC just won a lawsuit, or partial won a lawsuit against Coinbase about some of the coins on there being viewed as securities. I have to dig deeper into that to find out actually what's going on there. So I don't know. That's a tough one, right? Gensler right now sees, or at least in the past, he has seen Ethereum as a security. So it might be a little tricky on that one. We'll have to wait and see maybe what happens there. We may have to go to court or something like that. Unrelated question here. So, do you believe Rivian will bounce back in the near to mid future? I don't know if it's going to happen in the near future. I like Rivian because it's a growth story, but I don't think it's more of a long-term play. It's like a 5 to 10 year play on it. I had a lot more shares than I had, like 1,000 shares in Rivian. I sold those because I was looking at it. I'm like, this is a much longer play. Right now, the play here is with the miners, right, within the next year or two potentially. So I sold Rivian, a bunch of it, and put it all into like Cleanspark, Bitfarms, and a little bit in IREN as well. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it right now. And then when the Bitcoin, sorry, when the Bitcoin miners play is done with, I may buy some more into Rivian at that point. All right, has IREN finished its ATM yet? I don't think it might be close, right? When they reported that they are increasing their ATM to an additional 200 million, at that point they stated that they already used up 260 some million of it, which gets them pretty close to where they need to be based on my calculations. I think they may need to pull another 60, 80 million, which at that point isn't that far off. So I think they're pretty close to it. Maybe within the next couple of weeks, a month or two, they should be done pulling on it, hopefully. And at that point, if they can report saying, hey, we're fully funded 20 exahash, I think the stock is going to probably take off at that point. Why did Bitfarms part ways with its CEO? A couple of theories going around. One of the theories is personal reasons, but maybe health reasons, right? We don't know that, and obviously that's personal information. We're probably not going to find that out. The other potential is maybe the company wants to move down into the United States, right, where they can take advantage of the FASB rules for Bitcoin HODL. So there might be a reason there for it, and maybe the CEO doesn't want to move down to the U.S. He's in Canada right now, right? So maybe personal reasons, family, kids, things like that, grandchildren, whatever. If he has those, he may want to stay in Canada. He doesn't want to move down to the United States potentially. So I think those are the kind of reasons why. But usually when you see a change in the CEO because the board is not happy with the way things are going, you would have an announcement, CEO's out, we have an interim CEO, and we're looking for a new CEO, right? And this is not the case that we're seeing here. So I think it's a mutually agreed agreement, basically, with the CEO and the company, right? So I don't see it as a big problem. I would have seen it more of a problem if they actually ousted him right away and, did that. But right now, I don't think that's looking too bad. I actually bought Bitfarms this past week. I bought it last week and the week prior also. Any news on Hut 8 earnings? Those are coming out tomorrow, so we'll see what those are looking like. And they did state that they're only including a month of US BTC financials in there as well, which is kind of strange. But yes, they didn't close the deal until November sometime, like late November, I think. So maybe that's why they're only including a month of combined company, which doesn't give us a full picture. So now we're kind of having to wait until possibly Q1 results for them. Question, what's your end of year Bitcoin price projection? I think we're going to be probably like 100, 120,000 potentially. The way we were going right now, we're at 70, almost 70,000. We got basically another, where are we at? April. So we still have 9 months left to go. All right. At that point, I think, excuse me, we'll be at 100 to 120,000, if not higher, potentially, maybe 150,000 even. But just all depends. We may have a little bit drawdown here in May, right? Sell in May, go away for the summer. Things may kind of cool off a little bit, and then we'll get a nice rip going into after the summer through September, October, November, and then we might have obviously more selling going on in December as well. Let's see here. Will Bitfarms outperform Cleanspark from now on? As far as percentage gains, potentially, right? If they can get there's a couple things that have to happen. One, they have to continue to install all their miners pretty in succession, right? And grow their hash rate kind of nicely here through the end of the year to get to 20 exahash potentially, which is definitely a big feat. They're at 6.5 exahash now. You're looking at basically, was that 13.5 exahash being installed in 9 months, right? So they need to continue to do that. I think if they do that, then percentage gains, I think yes, because they're just way, way undervalued right now from where they should be compared to their other peers. So that would signify to me that they should be possibly outperforming Cleanspark in percentage gains, right? Cleanspark's already up 700, 800% from last year from the bottom. So it's already done way, way better than Bitfarms has done. So Cleanspark will probably still do really well. I'm thinking maybe another 5, probably another 5 to maybe 7x, if not better, depending where Bitcoin price goes. Hi, Sebastian, Cypher or Bitfarms or both. If you were new to these stocks, would you have bought it now? When do you see its top in the next 6 months, 1 year? Thoughts, please. Okay. Cypher, I think, is a little bit more fairly valued right now. It's had a pretty nice run up here. Bitfarms, I think, is still more undervalued. Bitfarms also has more hash rate growth currently, right, on the books at least. They've already said they purchased miners to get to 20 exahash. Cypher has the option to buy more miners this year, but they need to build out infrastructure, well, kind of like Bitfarms does, but at least they don't. But the difference is Bitfarms has the miners already purchased, whereas Cypher does not. So that's the only difference there. That's why I would go with that one. As far as where we might go in the bull run, some are saying that we might have a faster bull run, so it might be 6 to 12 months instead of the usual 12 to 18 months. We'll have to wait and see, right? It's a different cycle this time around. I mean, Bitcoin's already above its previous all-time high. Before the halving event, that has never happened. We have the spot Bitcoin ETFs as well. You got England now getting into the, what do they call those, ETNs, I think, right? So, and then you have other countries as well around the world potentially approving ETFs similar to ours that would allow people to buy Bitcoin in their trading accounts, basically. So it's a different beast this time around completely. Did Geoff Murphy sell his Bitfarms shares? I don't think so. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen anything on SEC website or CEDAR. I think that's how you say it. It's CEDAR website for Canada, but I haven't seen anything like that. Let's see here. When do you expect BTC to peak? Like I said, it's going to be a tough time figuring that out. Might be within 6 to 12 months. It could be longer than that, right? It could be the 12 to 18 months that we normally see, or it just could continue to go back up, right? When the ETFs happen for gold, at that point, the gold prices continue to go up for several years. Will we have the same kind of effect? Potentially. That's why I said it's a different cycle this time around. We'll have to definitely keep an eye on it and see where things go. So it's going to be interesting. Let's see here. Question. I sick of Bitfarms. If you have not talked about it, why is it lagging behind all the other miners? I sold HUT and got into Bitfarms, and it's turning into another HUT. Okay, let's talk about Bitfarms really quick. Bitfarms has an ATM, right? Anytime a company has an ATM, the stock usually lags. We saw that with Cleanspark. We're seeing it now with a little bit of IREN. IREN's kind of starting to pump up a little bit here, but because we're getting close to them possibly utilizing all the ATM. We saw with other companies as well, whenever they use an ATM, the stock just does not great. So with Cleanspark, we saw Marathon, Riot going up. Cleanspark was holding back, right? And then all of a sudden, Cleanspark comes out, says, hey, we're fully funded to 16 exahash, whatever it was, and the stock just takes off, right? So I think that we're going to see the same thing. Plus now you have the additional FUD in there of the CEO stepping down, getting a new CEO, right? So there's uncertainty there. That's kind of why it's happening there. But I look at it as potentially a gift. I've been buying this because based on what I'm seeing in the numbers, their productions, their uptime efficiency, everything else is looking great there. The only thing is we do have the ATM and the FUD around the CEO. But otherwise, I'm still buying. Do you still believe in Bitfarms achieving end-of-year hash rate targets? That is a loaded question a little bit because, one, let me just put it this way. I've talked to Ben from Ben from Bitfarms. He's their kind of like operations guy there, and he's really smart. So if he's on there, I think they can pull it off. The only thing that would obviously potentially have a misstep there would be possibly getting the power plugged in. But I think their buildings, everything else should be there ready to go to get to 20 exahash by the end of the year. If not, I'm willing to give them 3 months leadway a little bit because things do happen that are out of their control. We've seen it with Cleanspark as well, right? They've performed really, really well, like 95%. Whenever they say they're getting to something, they did, or they surpassed it. But the one time that does happen where it's electricity being connected or something like that, that's going to obviously push you back a little bit. So I'm willing to give them that kind of benefit of doubt. So if they can get to 20 exahash by the end of first quarter of 2025, I think that'd be great. Let's see. Okay, Sebastian, I was not clear on HODL at different price levels. What would mean to revenue for the miners that HODL versus IREN and Wolf who do not? Perhaps Bitfarms, Hive, they are similar in market cap. Yeah, Bitfarms and Hive, I think, are a similar market cap right now. But okay, going into HODL, I think HODL obviously helps them with the new FASB rules because they can revalue their Bitcoin at the current price at the end of the quarter instead of the lowest price, right? So at that point, if Bitcoin's like at 70,000 now, and then come second quarter, it's at 100,000, right? They can revalue that, so all those gains go on the balance sheet as well, which then they can put in better numbers. Whereas Wolf, IREN cannot do that, right? I don't think IREN could do that anyways because they're not a U.S.-based company, so they can't go with the FSB rules. Yeah, Bitfarms, they can't use it as well. You got Hive, they can't use it as well. There might be other ones. Digihost, I think, as well. I don't know. DMG might be a U.S.-based company. I think Digihost might not be. One of those two isn't. I can't remember which one. But anybody that's not domiciled basically in the United States can't use the FASB rules. That's my understanding at least, right? So IREN, eventually, if they have more production here or revenues, if revenue is more than 50% in the United States, then I think they could possibly use the FASB rules, but they don't HODL anyway, so it doesn't really make any sense there for them. But yeah, that's kind of the reason why you would want to HODL, because Bitcoin price goes up. You can then also use the increase in Bitcoin price, right, your gains, to then build out in the bear market potentially, right? So you don't have to maybe push on that ATM as much. or dilute shareholders as much potentially, because you do have that stack of coins that's gone from being valued at 200 million to possibly being valued at a billion, right? So then you can use that billion to build out in the next bear market. Do you think Bitcoin can retrace to 40, 50,000 before or after the halving? I don't think so. I think we have a lot of support there right around like the 60,000 mark or something like that, if you look at the chart. So I don't think it's going to happen. The only thing that might happen, we might have like a wild swan day where the chart or the wick goes, quickly down to 50,000, bounces back up for whatever reason, because there's a glitch on Coinbase, on one of the other exchanges or something like that. That's the only reason I could see that happening, but it doesn't look like it, because the spot Bitcoin ETFs are just buying up too many Bitcoins right now. And then you got potentially like the gold miner down in South America trying to buy 24,000 Bitcoin or something like that. And you got others trying to buy Bitcoin. It's just too much demand for not enough supply, unfortunately. Let's see, I'm trying to read a question here. Okay, this is pretty long questions here. So last cycle around, the halving, Mara and Riot were about $1 before going on a tear to about 80. Any ideas as to what caused them to go up so much, and if any cheap miners could do similarly growth this year? The reason was they had huge expansion plans, right? Marathon at that time said they're going to be getting to 23 exahash in sometime like 2022, I think, right? So they're like a year behind from where they're supposed to be. Same thing with Riot. So that's the reason why those were really pumping hard. And people also thought Bitcoin was going to go to much higher, to 100,000 potentially at that point. So that's the reason why I think that they really ran up so much. But even if you look at this cycle here, we had Cleanspark get down to $1 something, right? Bitfarms got down to like 40 cents at the bottom, right? And this was back in December of 2022. So we've seen these huge gains. If you look back at Cleanspark, like I said, I think it was $1 something, like $1.40 at the lowest point. From there towards at now it's 22. What is that, like 1,800% profit or gains potentially, right? So we're seeing that in some of the miners, especially the ones that are growing well, going into it. Let's see. Next question here. Does Bitfarms still being in the 2s and 3s months and losing their CEO with no replacement make you nervous or excited about the likely amazing returns this bull run since it hasn't run up yet? Yeah, it doesn't make me nervous at all. It would make me nervous. So I look at it on the operation side of things, right? Whatever's going on with the CEO, yes, it's obviously FUD because you can't control it. But as long as they don't get some crappy CEO in there, I think things will be good. Plus, they already have the plan in place to get to 21 or 20 exahash by the end of this year. So I don't think there's really any concern there, right? The biggest concern for me would be obviously the operation side of things. If we start seeing that they can't build out fast enough, or their uptime is much worse, or for whatever reason, right? Anything that's got to do with operations, that's kind of what I look at. And that's kind of what's guiding me into all these different mining sites that I've gotten into, right? For the longest time, everybody was bagging on Cleanspark, right? Cleanspark, they're diluting, they're doing this, they're doing all this other stuff. And that's the one that's done the best here based on their operations, their growth, everything else. And that's the one that's done the best for me. I'm up like 560% on it, right? But I was buying it when everybody else was basically dogging on it. And the way I like to play the market is be fearful of, what's it saying there? I keep saying this saying, it's be greedy when others are fearful, be fearful when others are greedy, right? So that's kind of the way I live by on this. And it's worked out pretty well for me so far. And I'm planning on buying more Bitfarms because I see it's just way undervalued from where it should be, really. Let's see here. What are your thoughts on Larry Fink saying BTC is an international currency and view the investment as long-term? When gold ETF was created, it went on a 10-year bull run. Will it be? That's kind of the question, right? That's the things that we're kind of trying to figure out. Will that be the same kind of thing that we had with gold? Right, gold went on a tear run for several years. Will Bitcoin do the same thing? Will we not have the bear markets anymore? It's all new. It's a different cycle this time around because of the ETFs. So we'll have to pay attention to what's going on, and I'll try to keep you guys, abreast of everything that's happening there. But I'm learning it just like you guys are. Let's see here. Thoughts on latest Mawson expansion news? The expansion news, you're talking about getting another client for hosting, or their client increasing the hosting there. I think that's good, but I'd like to see Mawson actually change out their miners. They have the 90 terahash miners and the 80 terahash miners. They can change those out. I think that'd be much better than hosting. But I don't know. It doesn't look like they have the cash to do it, obviously, and doesn't look like they want to pull on the ATM also. So we'll see. Question here: CORZ kind of energized by month end and plug in the rising right after 2 weeks, I think, like Seb said. Okay, so it wasn't a question. I thought it was a question. Yeah, so we're getting close to Corsicana being online. What are your expectations for Hut 8's earnings tomorrow? Any plans to have Sue Ennis on the channel? You guys know I don't do interviews. I will talk to people, obviously, on the Twitter Spaces because it's an open forum there and everybody can ask questions. So we'll see what happens tomorrow. Tomorrow, they're only going to include also the 1 month of operations with USBTC. At that point, I'm a little disappointed by that. I was hoping they would have the full 3 months combined of the two companies, but they're not. They're using only the data for basically December of the two combined companies. So we'll see. We may have to wait until maybe Q1 results to really see how they're doing as a combined company at that point. Let's see. Do you believe MicroStrategy will outpace the Cleanspark as we go into the halving? No. Sometimes MicroStrategy outruns or pre-runs, front runs Bitcoin price, and then it comes back down. We've seen it already here this past year alone. So I expect the same thing to happen there, right? Also, MicroStrategy doesn't really make sense for them to buy more Bitcoin when Bitcoin's going up to 100, 150,000, 200,000, where like Cleanspark and the other miners can actually mine it at a much lower cost, like a quarter of the cost of there, right? So eventually they're going to be like a 90% profit margin potentially, whereas MicroStrategy can't do that. CEO changes in like 2 years of Bitfarms. Yeah, I mean, it's happened, right? But there's personal reasons to get involved in this for whatever reason, right? So if the CEO wants to do something else or doesn't want to move down to the United States, like I've talked about before, things happen. As long as they get a good CEO, I don't care. It's obviously FUD right now. Let's see here. Thoughts on Gryphon Digital Mining as a blank check company to bring a private miner public? I think that's one of the things that Rob's talked about quite a bit, right? Where he sees them a little bit differently from the big miners, where they could possibly go after some of these smaller private miners and offer them maybe a higher upside potential than what you would get with like Cleanspark, Marathon, or Riot. I don't know how I view that. It depends on. I mean, it's possible. We'll have to see, right? Time will only tell on that one. What is your long-term price target for Cypher? 6 to 12 months. I think depending where Bitcoin price goes, right? Bitcoin goes up 2x. I could see them going up 4, maybe 3 to 6x, something like that, right? But it all depends on where Bitcoin goes on that side of things and how well they continue to operate going forward. Let's see here. Do you think the Ethereum will drop with the SEC news? So if the SEC approves a spot ETF for them, possibly might drop. I mean, we saw Bitcoin drop at that point when the Bitcoin spot ETF happens. Anything might happen. But I own Ethereum. I own a little bit of Ethereum, not much, but I'm not going to be selling anytime soon. I'm going to hold on to it for another 5-10 years, see where it goes. Let's see. When are you cashing out? BTC at 150 or 200K? I'll probably start cashing out. Bitcoin starts getting too close to 150,000. I'll probably start dollar cost averaging out of the miners that I do have because I just don't know where the top's going to be. I don't think anybody knows. Last time everybody was saying Bitcoin's going to 100,000. We, topped at 69,000. So lesson learned there. I held on to Hive through that period, and you learn from those things. So then you start going, okay, if I'm up 6-7 figures on the combined on the miners things, I'm going to start taking profits on those. But we'll see. Question: if you feel that other miners like Bitfarms, IREN would outperform at current price levels compared to Cleanspark, I would. Yes, I do, because I think there's maybe limited upside potential for Cleanspark going forward, right? They've had a huge run up. They're up 700%, 800%, depending on the time frame that you're looking at. From the bottom, where they bottomed out in 2022, I think they're up like 1,500%, 1,700%, something like that. So they've had a huge run up here. They could still go up another, I'm guessing maybe another 5 to 7, maybe 10x from here. But I think some of the smaller miners that have been underperforming lately, like Bitfarms and IREN, could possibly do better than that in the long run. That's kind of the way my thinking is right now. But we'll see. Right, we could get Cleanspark saying that they're going to be going beyond the 30 exahash to maybe 50 exahash, right, next year. well, at that point, they could do really well also. So there's a lot of dynamics here that go into play here. Let's see. What's the reason to keep your majority in Cleanspark? Why not move around allocations? That's up to you. I've been investing in Cleanspark since basically January of 2022, and I've just continued dollar cost averaging. I have a really low price on it right now. I'm at like $3 something in my average price, and I have a fair amount of shares right now. So I'm kind of like, I'm holding that. That's kind of like my lottery ticket right there. I'm holding on to that one, and then I'm buying into the other miners that I think are undervalued. So I'm dollar cost averaging more into the other ones. So I wouldn't sell Cleanspark to go into the other ones because there's still, I think, quite a bit of upside potential in Cleanspark itself. What is your take on Bitfarms CEO quitting? Will it have any repercussions? Secondly, do you think any can hit $5? I mean, the stock is already having some repercussions as far as the CEO quitting, leaving the company. But that's short term, right? I think this is a buying opportunity if you believe in the company. I believe in the company. I think they have a good growth plan going forward. So I'm not really worried about it. I'm buying more. But obviously, it's not financial advice. You guys need to do what you need to do. Do your own research. And then secondly, any might do a 5x, I think, from where they are right now, based on Bitcoin going up, maybe 3x from where it's at right now. So that could be possible. I wouldn't put that out of the question, but it just depends as how well they execute, if they can keep the costs down, things like that. Let's see. Ben Gangan should come to Riot. Without him, few Bitfarms could be where? Well, I don't think Ben's going to be going anywhere, but yeah, that would definitely be a blow, I think. And that might be one of those things that might make me double think my positions in Bitfarms if that happens, right? Ben goes someplace else, that might be a reason to think, well, maybe we want to start scaling out a little bit, but we'll see. I don't think it's going to happen, so I'm not even going to go over that. Let's see. What do you think about DMG growth this year? It's been small. It's been not great. DMG, Digihost, Annie, a couple other ones in there as well. Mawson, same thing, right? They're kind of, DMG, I think, is the one that's actually profitable here out of those miners, which I think they should be fine going forward. I'd just like to see more growth from them. Let's see. What do you think the maximum price for Bitfarms will be? I'm thinking like north of $15 potentially this cycle, if not higher. That's kind of like my conservative estimate right now. Is if you get to $15, that would be basically, was that going to be 7x potentially, right? 7x roughly. So if I can get there, I'll be a happy camper. But it might go much higher depending where Bitcoin price goes and how well they can execute getting to the 2021 exahash. Let's see here. Okay, how would Q4 2024, Q1 2025 recession affect the miners? Honestly, I don't think there's going to be a recession. A couple of reasons. We have the elections coming up this year. And anytime there's elections, obviously the president in charge wants to have a nice economy. So he's going to be, whispering down Papa Powell's ear a little bit, saying, lower the interest rates. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's going to have obviously a positive impact on the economy because interest rates are high right now. So that's going to help housing. It's going to help automotive sales as well. That's going to definitely boost the economy at that point. So I don't think it's going to happen. If we do get a recession, it might not be until like 2025, maybe towards the end of it into 2026 potentially. Because if they lower the rates, things might get out of control again. They have to start raising rates, and then they might raise them too much. And then at that point, we might get into a little recession there. Okay. Any guess on who Mr. 100 is? I have no idea. But yeah, this is a guy that keeps buying, 100 Bitcoin a day or something like that. That's interesting there. A sovereign state, potentially. I was joking. I said Elon Musk on one of the Twitter spaces. But yeah, nobody really knows on that one. I mean, there's obviously a couple individuals that could do it, countries as well. But we just don't know. Is it warranted that Cleanspark should be higher share price for tomorrow? Yeah, they have lower share count. But what you really want to look at is market cap. Right? If you still look at market cap for Marathon, it's still over I think it's close to 5 billion. And Cleanspark's at close to 4 maybe, I think. I mean, we really looked in a couple of days. But I think that's kind of where it's at. So Marathon still has a larger market cap than Cleanspark. There we go. Let's see. Okay, good question here. Thoughts on Bit Digital and why no one talking about their AI income bringing in more than they even earned in BTC money? Yeah, that is a good point, and that's something that Sam has brought up on the Twitter Space as well when we had him on there. And I think it's just people need to see what the actual profit margins are on those, right? They've definitely have a sizable revenue stream there, possibly now 100 million if they sign the contract with the customer there. But what is the profit margin there like? That's what we really want to see. How profitable is it? When I spoke with Sam on the Twitter Spaces, I asked him the question, where would Bitcoin need to be in price compared to what you're getting in profit margins right now for the AI side of stuff? He said Bitcoin would need to be around 100,000, right? So that's not too far off from where it's at right now. And at that point, Bitcoin goes further beyond that. The miners are actually making more than the AI stuff is, right? So could that money that they got for the AI and servers and things like that, spent on that, could that have been better deployed into Bitcoin miners, right? That's kind of the question that's kind of in the community right now, which is going to be better. Obviously, the AI side of things is going to be a longer term, potentially another 2.5 or something like that, 2 3/4 years left on it, I think. So they do have a more stable revenue stream, right? Then Bitcoin goes way up, goes way down, way up, way down. It's just more unpredictable. So I think that's really the question is based on what they are generating with AI, could they have made more with Bitcoin mining, right? Over the 3 years, right? You're obviously not going to have 3 years of great mining, but during this bull run, if Bitcoin goes up to 200, 250,000, whatever it might be, could you have made more from Bitcoin mining than the AI side of things will bring in and just gross profit basically? But that's it. Let's see. Okay, another good question here. Do you think BlackRock and other whales could trigger a huge sell-off so BTC supply increase the demand so they can buy BTC cheaper? The supply is shrinking. They can't trigger it by themselves, but I think if the people that are buying the ETFs, if for whatever reason they start selling or rebalancing their portfolios because Bitcoin's gone up 100% or something like that, we might see that happening. But we'll see, right? People rebalance their portfolios all the time, and that's usually like towards the end of the year or something like that. If it's, or maybe even sooner, right? If you buy Bitcoin right now at 70,000 and goes to 140,000 within the next, let's just say 6 months, at that point, people are going to be rebalancing some of their portfolios because now they had 5% allocation. Now it's 15% allocation in there. So they're going to be possibly rebalancing it there. So it's something to be mindful of there. That could be happening as well. Let's see here. I heard there could be a short squeeze very soon on coin and MicroStrategy. Any thoughts on that? That's possible. They've had a huge run up here. It's possible that somebody's going to be. You can't have a short squeeze because there's not a lot of short interest on those. You need a much higher percentage of short interest. So never mind what I said earlier. But yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. Let's see here. Question: what miners are still looking to add? You mean add in hash rate? The big guys, obviously, Cleanspark, Marathon, Riot, Bitfarms, IREN, Cypher, TeraWolf, they're all still looking to add more. Let's see. Did you receive any offers to promote any BTC miners? No, I don't. I do get a bunch of offers in my email to promote some crypto, some altcoin thing. Will never do that to you guys, nor will I do that to myself. But yeah, I get asked that a lot. But for the miners, nope. That's why I don't do interviews, right? I want to have basically a wall between me and them. I do the Twitter Spaces where I think it's a public forum. It's a different story. But for me, it's here's the line. This is where I'm going to stay on it. You guys stay on it that way, and that way I can praise you or bash you if I need to. Riot did reach out to me. I commented on this on when I talked about Riot. They reached out to me. They were willing to pay for my accommodations to go down to their new facility in Corsicana. And I said, thank you, but I can't. I'm going to have a line there. If I wanted to go, I'd pay myself for those travel arrangements, all those things. I would have paid for myself. I don't want to be beholden to a company or any company for that matter. Let's see. Do you plan on trimming your shares as we go along or time the top and sell all? I'm going to be honest. I suck timing the bottoms, suck timing the tops. So I'm going to dollar cost average out just the same way as I did dollar cost average in. Like I said, I was buying Cleanspark, Bitfarms in January of 2022. And I bet at that time, Cleanspark was at like $9. Bitfarms was at $5. I mean, Bitfarms went down to 40 cents. Cleanspark went down to like $1 something. I continued to buy in. And as the price continued to go down, I was actually buying more shares. So that has worked out really well for me. And I'll probably do the same thing going up. Let's see here. Time to sell Cleanspark and Riot. That is up to you, my friend. It all depends on what your time frame is, right? What are your other things that are going around in your life? I will say that I'm holding. I think we're nowhere near the top yet, so I'm going to continue to hold. I could be wrong on this. That's why you guys have to do your own due diligence on it. Let's see. Okay, my opinion on Riot. Riot, I did like the interview that he did, Jason last did with Bryce McNally and Anthony. He was very open and honest about the problems that they're having at Rockdale, which is nice to hear. And they know that they have issues there, right? The question that I have, the big one that I have, is the new facility for Corsicana, will that have all the power that they want? In Rockdale, they only have a 345 megawatt PPA in place, which after that, they would have to pay the prevailing market prices for electricity at that point. And that's why I think they're curtailing so much, because it doesn't make any sense for them to possibly mine at that point. Now, if they have all the access that they want in Corsicana, they can put in their immersion systems and everything else and run as close to 100% as possible. I think that's great, right? That'll be a different story for them altogether. But if they also have some kind of PPA where they only have access to X amount, and then they're getting the rest of the power at prevailing prices, they're going to be probably in the same kind of boat that they are in right now. So there's obviously some benefits of being in Texas, but there's also some negatives of being in Texas. And one of those is obviously the higher prices for electricity, potentially at some times, and it just all depends. So it really depends on that. And I'm hoping we can possibly get more information on that next quarter or something like that when they start operating at the Corsicana facility. Also would like to see them start doing the conference calls after the earnings, right? I think that would be great for investors, for everybody else, and things like that. But they do have good growth plans. They have a lot in their pipeline. They just need to execute, and they really need to figure out a way to be up a lot more. Let's see here. Do you think it is better to hold miners, ETF, WGMI than other mining stocks? It depends on the mining stocks that you're talking about, because the WGMI ETF, there's another one, BitQ, I think, is another one. They have a basket of mining stocks in there. Those do pretty well. They track Bitcoin, typically right around, like, if Bitcoin goes 2x, they'll usually go like 3, 4x on top of that. It's not as great as the miners. The miners will actually do like a 3 to 6x on top of Bitcoin going 2x. So that's kind of why I have the WGMI ETF in my 401k profit sharing plan. But then I have the miners in my actual self-custody portfolio, I guess you could say, on that one. Let's see here. If you think the miners can 10x from here, what price does BTC need to be? Well, Bitcoin would have to go at least probably 3 to 4x from here, where it's at. So if you're looking at 3x, we're looking at 210,000 to up to about 280,000 at that point, I think, somewhere around there. Question: if Bitcoin doesn't get up 100%, the miners are going to have a serious problem with the revenue. How can miners be a good deal when they produce only half or what they are doing now? Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the issue there, right? We need to have Bitcoin going up because you also have normally we have the hash rate also going up on the network. But if Bitcoin still goes up 100%, they're still going to be making like what they're making right now, right? So that's going to be even. But then we're also guessing Bitcoin's going to probably go up even higher because of that, because of the cycle, the spot Bitcoin ETFs and everything else. And the miners can generate Bitcoin from the rewards at a much lower cost than what it costs for Bitcoin to be made itself. So they do have pretty good margins there as well. Going down here, trying to catch up to the question, but you guys keep having more questions. Let's see. Okay, when you sell your mining stocks, do you plan putting it in Bitcoin for the long haul? No, I'm going to try to diversify a little bit, maybe get some real estate or something like that. Pay down some debt, pay down my school debt. I still have about 60,000 I need to pay down on that, so I'll be living debt free at that point. But I plan on doing some other things with it, possibly buying some real estate, things like that. Just kind of diversify a little bit and then see where things go and maybe get back into miners. I may put some more into like Rivian and maybe buy a couple of Bitcoin, but not at the top where it's at right now. I would like to see another bear market, have Bitcoin go down another 70% or something like that. It'd be great. At that point, I'd probably buy Bitcoin, but now while it's going up. I already own Bitcoin too, so I'd like to have more, but I think it's enough for me. Let's see. What are your thoughts on IREN? I like IREN. I wish they would hodl. That's the only thing that I kind of like a little nitpick of them. And then I wish they would also report quarterly. That's always been a little nag of mine on them. Potentially, they might be able to report quarterly if they have more than 50% of the revenue coming from the United States. I think they would be forced to do it then. But we'll see. Do I see DMG doing 10x? I mean, Bitcoin goes up 3-4x. It's potential. I mean, it might. Right? Bitcoin going up kind of lifts all boats, and DMG might be one of those as well. But depending on from where it's at right now, maybe not. Maybe another 5x from where it's at right now, potentially. It's gone up quite a bit already from the bottom that it had in December of 2022. Let's see. Any thoughts on Bitfarm price after earnings and having? So Bitfarm's already put out their earnings, I believe. I would have to. Yeah, they did. Let me double check here. But I believe they already put out their earnings on Bitfarms. Let me go down here. Q4. Yep, they already put those out. So you're probably talking about Q1 earnings, I'm guessing. When those get reported probably in the next 6 weeks or so, they should have a positive quarter, I believe. But we'll see, depending on how much crap they put into it like they did in Q4. But other than that, I think they should be pretty good. Okay, so another question here. Do I expect a retrace before the halving? Not really. We might see a small one. We might go down to like the 60,000 range or something like that, but I don't think so. I think there's just too much demand from the spot Bitcoin ETFs, pulling in a lot of the Bitcoins that are being made available through miners. So I think that's going to continue on. Any updates on Greenedge? No, I stopped tracking them about a year plus now, I think, because they stopped providing monthly production updates, and they were not doing well at that time. I think they might have turned things around a little bit here, but I haven't seen anything that's really compelling with them. What miners are affected by this hailstorm in Texas? I don't think any of them really. The hailstorm was down by, was it not Austin? Is it Austin? Can't remember. It's down south part. So it was like 700 miles away, not 7 hours away from Riot's facility, which I think is close to also where Marathon has their up there. So I don't think anybody's really affected by it. Let's see. Stronghold will outperform? What are your opinions? Not really. The only thing that they have really good going for them is a potential carbon capture thing going for them, right? If they can get that working and make a sizable income from that, I think that will help them. But if you just look at their quarterly results here recently, their fuel, operation expenses, and something else was like way over from what the Bitcoin money is, or even for combined operations, I think, from revenue generation, from the electricity and things like that. It was just way over that. So they really need to cut down on their expenses as much as they can on that. At that point, it might be a much different story, but right now it doesn't look too good for them. Obviously, with Bitcoin being up where it's at, it's helping, but it's not that great. Let's see here. Any altcoins stand out to you? I got out of the altcoins. I've learned my lesson on those. Last 2 cycles, tried getting into those. Did poorly on those, so I'm out of those. Let's see here. If you had to go all in on one miner, which would you choose? Right now, it's a tough question. Bitfarms, or not Bitfarms, Cleanspark, Marathon have had a really nice run up already. They still will do really well, but I think probably like IREN or Bitfarms would be one of the ones I would probably go more all in, but I wouldn't go all in on just one. I think there's a couple there will do well. Bitfarms, IREN, Cypher, Wolf potentially as well. So there's a couple there. As far as which one's going to do better, it just all depends on how well they perform, how well they operate, how well they execute. All those things play into it. So we'll see. Top 5 miners, Marathon, Riot, Cleanspark, IREN, Bitfarms. I could also include Cypher in there. I'm looking at growth and things like that. size-wise and things like that. Obviously, if you look at efficiencies, I would say Marathon would not be in there right now. Riot would not be in there as well. You would have probably Cleanspark, at that point, Bitfarms, IREN, Wolf, Cypher would be kind of like the top 5 for efficiency, the way that I would look at it. You could have Hive in there as well. Hive is pretty efficient, but they're a smaller miner, right? They're not really growing that much on that one. Let's see here. So why are TeraWolf so artificially high in share price? They keep going up. They actually provided some good numbers for their quarterly results, which I think is helping the stock actually do pretty well because they're paying down their debt, things like that. So I think people are a little bit more elated with that information, right? They're a little bit less concerned that they're not going to be able to make it, which is obviously my concern as well because they had 140 million in debt. They paid down 40 of it million now, and they're going to pay down another 30 million, I believe, in April as well, is what Paul said. So I think they're doing much better there, and that's possibly why the stock is kind of going up because before that, the debt was keeping him down. Let's see here. Can Ben Gagnon become the CEO of Bitfarms? I believe. I don't think there's anything that's stopping it, but it might be like I said earlier. I think maybe they're looking for a CEO that's based in the U.S. so they can be headquartered in the U.S. potentially. Maybe that's the reason there. Don't know. Let's see here. Would you be willing to go on a live stream with Tom and George at Talking Investing? It would be awesome to get your great minds together. Yeah, I mean, one of these days, I think we will. Just a matter of time. I work during the day. Those guys usually do their shows right afterwards or during the day as well. So it's just a timing thing right now. Maybe on like a Saturday or Sunday, one of these days, maybe we'll hook up or do something like that. But definitely enjoy watching Tom as well and George. Sometimes I even pop in on their live streams and chat with you guys there. Already covered this. Anywhere's a Bitfarms CEO. I'm not worried about it unless they get a crappy CEO. But right now, I'm still bullish on it. Question: if you're not selling until 100,000, 150,000, why not sell miners and buy BitX, 2x? Because I think the miners can still do better than the 2x. That's the reason why. Let's see here. Riot versus Riot. 1 year hold. Which do you buy? What's the difference? You got the same ones. Okay. I was watching the two-phase cooling discussion that this is exactly how the nuclear plant that I work at works. Always wondered if I would see these miners get to this phase. I'm geeking out on you. That's a good question. I posed this question to a couple people here, not here, to the community that I know of, the miners and things like that. And right now, the two-phase immersion cooling is expensive. So they're looking more at how much wattage can you squeeze into a gallon of basically of that electric fluid. And what is that break-even price going to be at? So right now, it looks like things are going to be too expensive. We'll have to see, obviously, what Marathon's is like. And if Marathon's solution is cost-effective, right? That's the big question there. I was talking to some guys. The guys were actually creating ASICs that were custom built for this type of system, the two-phase immersion cooling. And you could, they said you could stack the machines, I mean, like a couple millimeters apart from each other, the ASIC boards, and you could stack them, really dense. And if you could do that, that obviously makes more sense than having just, 3 hash boards or 3 or 4 hash boards in an AC miner, and then miner being put into it, the power supply next to it. That takes up a lot of room. So that's the economies of scale there, I think, that you would need basically the ASIC boards, like stacked, I mean, dense as you can because the electric fluid works so well on it that it would work out, and you have to have new systems for it. So, but we'll see. Maybe in the next 5-10 years, something like that, maybe that will become more prevalent. Right now, they're saying that the cost to just regular immersion cooling with using like mineral seal is a lot better, or a lot more cost effective. There we go. Let's see here. Okay, Riot versus Mara, 1 year. Which do you buy? Buy them both. I think they're both going to do well. Which one's going to do better? Riot. I don't know. I mean, they're both growing really well. It's just their operations. Marathons has sucked here in the last 3 months. Riot's has sucked here for the last 12 months or something like that. So just who can fix their operations first? I think that's the real question there. Let's see here. Am I tuning into Hut 8's earning call tomorrow? What is the prediction? I think because they're a U.S. That's a tough question now, because they are U.S. domiciled headquartered company now, right? They have a huge HODL position, but before the merger, they were a Canadian-based company. I don't know how that will work with the FASB rules. Can they reevaluate that Bitcoin price now being in the U.S.? If they can do that, then I think the quarter is going to be great. If they can't do that, it's probably not going to be that great. Plus, they're only including 1 month of the combined company information with USBTC after they merged in late November of last year. So that's kind of disappointing there. I wish they would have included the combined company's information for both for the quarter, but it doesn't look like they're going to be doing it. I may tune into it, but we'll see. Let's see. Last question. Where do you see WGMI in 10 years from now? I have no idea. I can barely predict what's going to be WGMI price in 3 months, let alone in 6 months. 10 years out, who knows where it's going to be. Let's see. Are you expecting any upcoming ATM from Cleanspark soon? I think they're already pulling on the ATM a little bit. They better be pulling on it right now with the stock being up so high so they can dilute less. But I know they were fully funded to like 16 to 20 exahash. They still, I think, need to fund, obviously, their growth to the 30 exahash. So they might be pulling on it. But they better be pulling on it right now because the stock is doing really well. Let's see here. Thoughts on IREN growth? I like it. Obviously, I think they're tackling 20 exahash by the end of this year. Right? They have, I think, 10 exahash already secured. And then 10 exahash is optional right now. So as long as they do that, I think that's going to be great. WGMI price targets by July 2024 to January 2025. I mean, it could go up another, 50% maybe, something like that, depending where Bitcoin goes. It follows Bitcoin more so than anything else. So keep it on Bitcoin. That's kind of where it's going to go. Let's see here. IREN potential by the end of 2024, I believe it's going to be 20 exahash. That's their goal, I believe. Let's see. Let's see. Trying to find a question here. Okay, covered that one already. Okay, yeah. Well, this isn't really a question, but Wolf long-term access to cheap nuclear power is underrated. I agree, yeah. And I think the main reason they're being underrated is because of the debt that they have, right, at that point, and growth. We really want to see growth. No HODL also. That might be the reason why. Woodstock, thank you so much for the super chat. Appreciate it very much. Let's see here. Okay, question. What do you think is the biggest info blind spot you have regarding which miners will do best after the halving? Biggest blind spot. I mean, the biggest blind spot is obviously going to be their growth and operations, how well they can build out, right? A lot of them have a lot of huge growth, going to 20 exahash, 30 exahash. Beyond that, things like that. Can they actually execute on that? Can they get the infrastructure in place in time? Can they do that? That's, I think, the biggest blind spot there right now. Okay, why is Terrible's share price so much higher than Bitfarms when Bitfarms is clearly the better miner in terms of their operations? Bitfarms has an ATM, and they have obviously questions now with the CEO. I think that's why the stock's being kept down. But I think it's more or less the ATM. People, whenever they hear the ATM dilution, they freak out when they actually should be buying the shares, because if the stock price goes up, they dilute less. But, mentality of the investor is dilution, I'm out. So that's kind of what happens. For me, it's actually great because I get to buy more Bitfarms shares at a much lower price. I mean, I already have 17,000 shares. I'm going to probably get to 20, 25,000 shares by the time this is all done. So I'm fine with it. Let's see here. Which miner has the most potential upside percentage-wise from here, do you think? I think some of the smaller ones, I think like IREN, Bitfarms, TeraWolf, potentially Cypher as well. Right, some of the smaller miners that haven't had that huge rise in price recently, like Cleanspark, Marathon, and potentially Riot as well in there. But I think some of those guys might, percentage-wise, do a little bit better, potentially, right? Depends on how well they can execute and things like that, right? And then if you have Marathon increasing their hash rate going forward, Cleanspark, whatever, that could also catapult them even higher. So it's tough. That's why I have my well, I have three companies that I invest in: Cleanspark, Bitfarms, and IREN. That's the ones that I'm getting into. But that has so far worked out pretty well. Let's see. Okay, how are the ETFs not a better BTC play than miners who keep diluting shareholders? The ETFs follow Bitcoin, right? And they also increase Bitcoin prices because of the demand. But they follow Bitcoin more so, whereas the miners can mine Bitcoin at a much lower cost than what Bitcoin price spot is at. So there's that alpha, I guess you could say, or the leverage play on it, right? Eventually, the miners will get to a point where their profit margin is going to be like 85 to 90% on Bitcoin that they mine. So that's the reason why I think there's a better play on the miners. Let's see. How likely is it that Bitfarms execute on their plan to reach 12 exahash and their other goals? Have other miners achieved this with relative ease? Cleanspark is one that comes to mind that has done it, obviously, with relative ease. Riot, for the most part, you could say. But you've seen, obviously, Wolf come from pretty much nowhere. Cypher, same thing. They've all done it pretty well here to get to where they are. You see Marathon. Marathon was delayed by a bit, but they got to beyond 23 exahash as well. And you've also seen one that's not public yet is Swan Bitcoin. They went from basically stealth mode middle of the summer of last year to being at 7 exahash now in, 8, 9 months or something like that. So it is doable. And Bitfarms has the infrastructure already. They already have the land or the buildings in some places in Argentina, Paraguay. They just got to build out, get the transformers in place, things like that, plug in miners, and they're off to the races. So I think they're going to get to 12 exahash potentially. I think they were saying that they want to get to that by the end of the first half. So we got basically 3 months left on that, right? That would basically double them from where they are right now. They're at 6.5, getting 12 exahash would double them. We saw CleanSpark get additional 6 exahash installed in a month. So it is doable. You just got to build out and have a good team in place, which I think Bitfarms does have. Going down here. Let's see. I'm looking for questions here. I think I'm catching up here to you guys. Okay. IREN versus Cypher versus Bitfarms right now, which one do you think has the most upside potential based on their current growth? So Bitfarms 21 exahash, IREN 20 exahash. Bitfarms also hodls a little bit. Cypher is supposed to get to, I think, 10 to 12 exahash right in 2025 sometime. But they have the option to buy more this year as well. If they do grow, then possibly Cypher could possibly overtake Bitfarms on that. But right now, Bitfarms just seems like it's more undervalued by the other miners. So I think Bitfarms might have the more upside. But there's FUD around it, right? ATM, CEO change, not good news. I think it's going to take a little while for that to get resolved a little bit. Let's see. Okay. What obstacles are there for mining companies to reach their targets? Sometimes it sounds like they are missing workforce. I don't think it's workforce that they're missing. It's mostly just the components that go into it. Some of the components have a long lead time. Transformers, things like that. I mean, you're looking at 6 to 12 months lead times, if not longer sometimes. So that's basically the thing. It's basically infrastructure right now. Everybody's trying to grow as much as they can, but there's just not enough infrastructure out there to either gobble up possibly or build out as quickly as they need. So that might be the impediments to their growth right there. Let's see here. What percentage of your liquid net worth is in Cleanspark and Bitfarms? I'm not going to tell you guys my numbers there, but it's 6 figures. I'll just say that. Let's see here. Mara and Cypher, what are your thoughts on holding those? I see no problems with them going forward. As long as Marathon, they can fix their issues, right? Marathon did really well last cycle. They were up like 7,000% at one point at the peak. So I expect them to do really well this time around, and I think they will solve their issues with the operations. It's just taking a lot longer than a lot of us would like, because they do have such huge potential there, and they're just kind of wasting it for whatever reasons with operations not being to where they need to be. That should be, I keep saying this, that should be like their priority one. All this other stuff that they're doing with the immersion cooling and the computing boards, the software, the firmwares, I guess you'd say, all this other stuff, that should take a side seat. You need to pay attention on what's bringing you income. And right now they're losing money on it because they're just not operating the way they should. Let's see here. What are your thoughts on BitDeer, massive growth plans? Yeah, they do have pretty good growth plans here. It's they're supposed to install 3 point something exahash, right? But they're adding newer miners, so that kind of changes out some of the older miners in there. But they're planning to grow, so that's good there. I would like to actually see them grow more in their soft mining, but with them, it's a little questionable on the reporting side of things. Hopefully, they report a little better on this time around with their financials. Let's see. Why are you accumulating Bitfarms versus other miners? Based on my metrics, based on what I'm seeing with them, based on their growth trajectory, based on their uptime, their efficiency, basically on those types of things, right? And where do they place on my metrics? If I look at the monthly, the quarterly results as well, they've always placed pretty close to in the top 5, if not really close to that. And I see them just being way undervalued right now from where they should be. But we know why. ATM, new CEO, possibly, that's having an impact. Let's see here. What's your portfolio allocation looking like for Cleanspark, Bitfarms, and IREN? Are you holding 33% of each? No. So obviously I had huge gains in Cleanspark right now. That's now like probably, I would say probably like 75% of my portfolio in those three. Bitfarms would be probably like 20%, something like that. And then IREN's like a couple percentage points in that. It's not nothing major. Probably want to buy more IREN, but Bitfarms just keeps going down. So it's just like, oh, I want to buy more. So I keep buying Bitfarms instead of IREN. So if IREN starts, or if Bitfarms starts going up, I'm going to start buying more IREN. But we'll see. Let's see. Let's see here. What are your thoughts of Cleanspark Chairman Matthew Schultz selling a ton of his shares today? I didn't see that. I'll have to take a look at that. If that's the case, I'll take a look at it. It might be one of those things where it was the same thing with with Zach, right? Zach had a 10B51 dash plan or something like that they laid out earlier last year, where the price was much lower, right? But they set it to if Bitcoin reaches a certain price at a certain date, they're basically forced to sell because there's times when they can't sell. And then this way they can't be accused of insider information trading and things like that. So it might be one of those reasons. I don't know. We'll find that out if that is the case, though. Let's see here. With Bitcoin price going up and Bitfarms on track to achieve 21 exahash by 2025, what's the actual risk besides BTC going to zero? Execution. That's really the only thing there that's kind of questionable, right? Can they actually build out the 13.5 exahash of infrastructure that they need to get to within the next 9 months? Can they do that? If they can do that, which I think there's probably a high probability that they will. If not, it might take them into like Q1 of 2025, which I'm okay because things happen. We don't want it to be like a marathon situation where they were delayed by a year. But if they're delayed by a couple months, I'm okay with it. Things happen. It's fine. So if they can get there by the first quarter, I'll be happy. Let's see. Is it worth selling Riot to buy other miners, or would you hold? That's up to you. I like Riot. Riot just has issues. If they can resolve those issues, I think they'll do much better. But they obviously have a huge potential there. The other side of it is I wish they would get rid of their hosting business because that's a losing money business right now. Get rid of that, focus on self-mining, and they would be much, much better off. But I think they still can do pretty well. They did really well last cycle. They were up 4,000, 5,000%, I think, something like that. Marathon did the best, but Riot was like the second in that one. So it's definitely up to you. Let's see. Okay. With the growth of the BTC ETFs and the upcoming halving, will there be a dry spell of BTC for purchase with the miners and therefore with Coinbase and the likes. A dry spell, you mean like, I don't know if there's, trying to think how that would work. I mean, there's obviously going to be more demand, I think, than there is supply. So I don't know if we're going to see any dips in Bitcoin possibly happening. It would be interesting to see, but we'll see. I don't know. Let's see here. Can you share your thoughts on cannabis stocks starting to move? I don't track cannabis. I like the miners because miners provide monthly operational updates. I can track them. I can see how they're doing. Cannabis is, I mean, you basically would have to sit at the front of the store and see how many people go in and out and what they're buying in order to figure out what's going on with the business. So I'm not tracking those right now. Any thoughts on Riot price performance recently? What are your expectations going forward? Big thing is for them is to fix their operations. That's main thing there. Number two is get out into the public, get out in front of the investors, do conference calls with investors after your earnings. Don't just do put out the information on the earnings, but don't do a conference call. That's that's kind of the wimpy way out. If you're having issues, yes, address them. Talk to investors, say here's what we're doing, and you're gonna be doing much better. I think that's kind of why I think the stock is kind of acting the way it is, because their operations haven't been great, and they're dodging questions from investors as well, which is obviously not something investors like to see. Can you explain the ATM for Bitfarms, how it works? Seems that they keep pushing the price down. Yeah, so they have an ATM for 375 million, which is roughly what they're going to need less than that to get to where they need to go. But basically, they have an ATM. The ATM is basically you get X amount of shares, and you give it to another person and say, here, I want you to sell those shares on my behalf, and I get the profit for it basically on it. So it's basically like going to an ATM, right? They're going to a third party and going, here's these shares, sell them, and I'm getting the change for it. And that's happened with other miners. It happens with pretty much all miners. But we saw this as well with Cleanspark. When they were growing, there was actually, I had a conversation with one of you guys here, I can't remember the name right now, yesterday on the comments section. There was a spot when Cleanspark diluted 500 million or got an 18 for 500 million, and their stock price at that, or their market share was like, gosh, what was their market share at that point? I can't remember now. It was like 400 million or something like that, 300 million or something like that. So it was like double what their actual, or even less than that. I think it was like 160 million their market share was at that point. So that kept Cleanspark down for a long time, right? And we saw Marathon, Riot, others doing much better. And then finally Cleanspark goes, yeah, we're fully funded to 16 exahash, and the stock just takes off, right? Because at that point, investors knew that they weren't going to be diluting even more. Let's see. Looking for a question here. Okay, I think I found one. How many outstanding shares does IREN have, and what happens when they stop issuing shares? Well, if they stop issuing shares, you're going to have less dilution. But right now, let's see, what do I have for IREN? IREN is over here. I have them with 104 million shares. I think it's maybe more than that. I think since they diluted more, I think it's like up to 120 million, somewhere around there. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe it's somewhere around there. Okay. Can you share your thoughts on GreenEdge? Like I said before, I tracked GreenEdge like a year and some months ago when they were still providing their updates. They stopped doing that, so I stopped covering them. I think they're doing a little bit better now. They were in definitely financial issues at that point when they stopped providing those. That's kind of like a clue. If a company stops providing monthly production updates, something's wrong. And that's kind of what's happened with Gree. But I don't know what's going on with them now. I think they have a new CEO even, but I don't know if they started providing those yet. I haven't really looked into it. But they might have provided the updates here recently. Let's see. My question is, how do you explain the concept of what BTC is to a family and friends who are uneasy about investing in it and the miners associated with BTC? I've had many discussions with my friends and family on that. It's not easy. I think results speak for themselves, and I think with the spot Bitcoin ETFs being now approved, I think that should be a much easier topic, because you do have it through regular investment accounts and IRAs and retirement accounts and all those things. It's available there. So they can get exposure to that if they just put in 1%, 2%, 3%, 5% of their exposure into it over the long run. I think they'll do much better. You can explain it to them that way, kind of like gold, how gold went from where it went, and then for several years it went way up, right? That's the same kind of thing. So it's definitely, there's probably some good books on it, but don't know which ones I would recommend for somebody that's a novice in that space. You just gotta kind of get orange pilled over time, I think. You either get it right away or you don't, and if you don't get it right away, it may take a while for somebody to get converted over. Okay. What's your opinion about Sphere right now, and do you think it's going to survive after the halving? It's going to be tough for Sphere, unless Bitcoin goes much, much higher. So I'll show you guys this chart here on my numbers here really quick. Let me see, where's the break even right now? This is based on Sphere's Q3 numbers from last year, right? So let me see, where's Sphere? Sphere is down here. Okay, so here it is. So here's Sphere. This is based on those numbers from last year and based on where Bitcoin price is right now, roughly. They're going to need Bitcoin to be about 147,000 at that point to break even. And the reason for that is the quarterly expenses here far outpace what their actual income is. We're taking into account here, obviously, the cost of digital mining, cost of services, research and development, and then general administrative. General administrative was 5.3 million here in Q3. They generated only, where's the revenue side of things? Went too far. Revenue was only 7.1. That's way too much. General administrative compensation for only 7 million in revenue. I mean, that's, what is that? Going back up here. That accounts for 71% of their expenses going to general administrative. That's not good. You're not going to be able to survive that if that continues going forward. Or actually, this is as of Q4. So actually Q4 numbers. So as of Q4 numbers, so forgive me on that one. I thought it was still Q3, but it's Q4 because they're highlighted here. Maybe they included a bunch of bonuses, things like that. That's why they're getting up there to 147,000 going to break even, right? And then I'm looking at here with the network hash rate being at 590 exahash, right? If it continues to go up, it's going to be much harder for them at that point, unless Bitcoin continues to go up much higher as well. But the big thing, let's go back to them here really quick. Sphere, let's look at that number here. What was the number before that? So prior to that, even the quarter prior, so Q3 was 65%, right? So it's still not much of a difference. 71% obviously is worse than 65% of the general administrative being paid out to revenue. So it's still not good there, right? So I'm worried that they might not be around. But Sphere doesn't have any infrastructure or anything like that. They have basically all their machines hosted. So, I mean, who's going to buy them out potentially? I mean, somebody might just for the miners, but the miners they have are the 100 terahash miners, I believe, here, if my memory is correct. Where is it? There it is. Yep, 100 terahash miners. Not a lot of people are going to be wanting to buy those. I mean, they could sell those to somebody potentially. That might help them out a little bit there. Okay. Let's see. This is a bit of a different question. How do you feel comfortable putting so much money into such high-risk stocks? I understand them. That's the best way I can say it. I understand them. I can track them. I can see how they're doing. I actually feel more comfortable putting it into the miners than I would putting it into Apple or Google or somebody else like that, which I don't have information to. So that is the reason why I'm so comfortable doing what I'm doing. And because I track them, I have all the data, so that's why. Let's see, I think, oh gosh, that would be fabulous. All the companies provided monthly updates on their sales and everything else. Oh, that would be juicy. Maybe we can get a law passed that they have to do that, because things move much, much faster nowadays than they did back in the early 1900s when the stock market was created and things like that. So it would be great to have all that data monthly. Oh, the data I could run on that. Then I would feel much more comfortable investing into other companies as well. Let's see here. Question, I think Riot will be the institutional fave in time. Most retailers left for another miner. When it does take off, most will not be in it. Could be potential, right? I mean, definitely something to look out for. Do you ever feel anxious? No. I've been in Bitcoin and miners since 2017. I've been through these. I was more anxious back then, more, I think, freaked out, scared than anything else at that point. Just things were going up. We were getting in the wrong times, getting out at the wrong times. Learned a lot of lessons over those years, and right now I have the data. I think the data just kind of soothes me a little bit. As weird as that might sound, but the data obviously speaks to me. Let's see here. IREN, Cleanspark, Bitfarms priced by the end of the year. I want to get out by then and get into real estate. That's kind of my goal here, get into real estate a little bit to diversify a little bit. But price targets, I mean, you could see IREN closer probably to like $30, Bitfarms maybe $15 to $20 potentially. And then Cleanspark, maybe north of $70, I think is easy for Cleanspark, but depends where Bitcoin price goes on those. But those are kind of like estimates. Don't go by those, but those are kind of my estimates on those. Soluna, what are your thoughts on Soluna Holdings? I used to cover them. They were also one of the ones that stopped providing monthly production updates. That was a queue there. There's issues, money issues usually. So don't have much information on them. I think they pivoted more to a hosting provider than a self-Bitcoin miner. So I'm staying away from that one. Hive did better today. Any thoughts? I mean, sometimes you get this rotation where people go from one miner to the other because they made some profits and they go on to the other one. Could be some institutions buying as well. Could be a number of things here. Let's see here. When do you expect the miners to really take off in price appreciation? I'm thinking still after the halving event. Bitcoin continues to go up. Bitcoin's up to 100,000, 150,000. Miners are going to rip. That happens. Let's see here. Okay, what's the difference between ATM and the actual debt like Wolf has at the moment? So with debt, they have to pay a percentage. Right now it's pretty high. I think it's like 11% on their debt. So they've been paying a lot of millions to cover that expense there. That's costing them, but the only thing is they're not diluting shareholders, right? Excuse me. With ATM, shareholders get diluted, but the way I view it, as long as the dilution is accretive to investors, where you're getting a lot more hash rate, where you're going to be generating more revenue, I think that's okay, right? That's kind of the way I look at it. What's your top 3 miners and why? If we look at operation side of things, right, we're not really taking a look at size of their HODL. We're not looking at the size of the market cap right now. I think the best 3 are Cleanspark, right? They've done a fantastic job with their growth over the last 3 years, basically from nothing to being at 16 exahash. Operation side of things as well. And you got possibly Bitfarms, I think, is in there as well. Iris Energy would be in there as well. They've always done really well. The ones that are still growing, right? There's other miners like Hive that have very efficient fleets, and not very efficient fleets, very efficient operations, but they're just not growing that much. So I can't really bring them up there to the top 3, but I think like there might be, the 3 could be kind of switched out. It would be like IREN, Cypher, and Wolf potentially as far as operations growth potential going forward on that one. Let's see here. What do you think of Bitfarms' recent price drops? I love them. I keep buying more, so I hope they keep happening so I can buy more. I'm not fazed by it. And the reason I'm not fazed by it is because of the data that I see so far, right? So if things change on the data side of things, as far as their operations are getting crap or something like that, or they're not reaching their goals where they're supposed to get to, then I'm going to start getting a little bit more worried. But right now, I'm not worried on it. Let's see here. Let's see here. Question. Okay. You still think Bitfarms will rip if they still have their CEO issue by the time of the halving when it's over? I think they're gonna have their CEO issue probably past the halving a little bit, right? It's gonna take a little time to find a good CEO, and hopefully they find a great CEO. But that's obviously my only worry there is, will they get a crappy CEO? At that point, if we get somebody with different viewpoints where they want to take the company into more of the direction of Hut 8 or Hut 8 or US Bitcoin, right? Where they're going into managed services and something like that. If we start hearing that, that's going to be my get out of town card right there. I'm going to be selling everything that I can. Let's see here. Question, what was Bitfarms' share count last peak at $8 with 6,000 coins compared to now or after this round of ATM and 800 coins, 500 million shares soon? That'll be 4 billion at $8. I don't know what the share count was at that point, but you got to also take a look at growth, right? They were basically, what were they at, like 2 exahash at that point right? They're going to be at potentially 21 exahash. So the growth matters more so than anything else, I think, than where they were before. Because you can see with other companies also, I think Marathon's going to probably do better with their all-time high this time around. So we'll probably Riot. So will Cleanspark. Cleanspark wasn't really a miner back then. But I still think that's going to play into it because I don't think Bitfarms going to get to 500 million shares. I think they're only going to need, I'd have to run the numbers again, but I think it was like they're going to need to dilute at the current stock price is at $2 or something like that. I think I calculated, what was it? They're going to need, oh gosh, what was it, like 20 million, 30 million shares diluted or something like that? No. Maybe more than that. I can't remember. I would have to do the numbers again on it. I don't want to give you guys wrong numbers. Let's see. Do you think growth is going to win over BTC HODL? I think it's a combination of both. If you have both, if you have growth and HODL, that's going to win in the long run, I think. Because you get gains in BTC HODL and you also get gains in revenue from Bitcoin. So it's a double whammy, I think, at that point. Okay. Let's see here. Marathon and Cypher price predictions would like to pay off mortgage. Yeah, I'd like to pay my mortgage too. Marathon, I think it can definitely go north of $60, $80 potentially if they fix their operations and things like that. Cypher, I think it'd probably go like to $20 potentially, if not more, depending on how fast they grow and things like that. It's just all over the place. We'll run some numbers on this once we have all the quarterly results for the miners. We'll run some numbers, estimates as far as where they could possibly be at. Let's see. Okay, people don't understand this. Why should Bitfarms be worth $4 billion? I think it'd be worth like $8 billion in the bull run, if not more. And the reason for that is if you look at Cleanspark, Cleanspark's worth $4 billion right now. They're at 16 exahash, right? Sure, they have a little bit higher HODL, right? They have 4,000 something. Bitfarms has about 800. But as Bitcoin price continues to go up and they get close to 21 exahash, they're only going to be really what's it going to be, a third lower in hash rate than where Cleanspark's going to be at 30 exahash potentially, right? So they should fetch a similar market cap, basically not a similar market, a third less market cap at that point. I think maybe a little bit more because they don't HODL as much, but it should be close to that, right around 33% less to 40%, maybe less. So if I think Cleanspark's going to $70 at a conservative number, we're looking at, what is that, 70? That's 14 billion for them. So I think that's why I think Bitfarms could be possibly like 8 billion potentially. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Let's see. Why is Bitfarms looking for a new CEO? Is this a surprise or was this planned? It might have been planned by the CEO currently. He might be moving on, maybe family issues for family reasons, for personal reasons, health issues, whatever it might be. It might be also that Bitfarms is looking to maybe headquarter in the United States. He doesn't want to move down to the United States, maybe. That could be a reason. We just don't know. All right, but at least we have them in a transition where he's still on board. They're looking for a new CEO, and I'm sure he's going to have some input on that as well going forward. So I'm not worried about that right now. Depends who they get, though. We'll see who they get. Then maybe I'll get worried. Let's see here. What do I think of CORZ? CORZ is undervalued tremendously, but they're obviously just out of bankruptcy. So I think investors need to see how they're doing with at least 1 quarter, 2 quarters of numbers after the bankruptcy. And obviously people have a sour mouth whenever a company goes into bankruptcy. So it might take a little time for that stock to kind of pump. We also need to see growth. And they got the warrants. I think the warrants is also confusing people as well. So that's kind of where we're at on it. Let's see here. Bitfarms had massive debt a couple years ago too. Doing ATMs reduces the stress. Yeah, they did that, and they obviously were selling a lot of the Bitcoin also to pay off the debt, which they had over $100 million in debt, I believe, at one point. And they paid it all off without going into Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which was great. Kind of like Wolf. Wolf is kind of in that same situation, right, where they had massive debt, but they're paying it off. They're getting it done. So I give kudos to anybody that can do that, right, and still survive and then grow, like Bitfarms planning to grow to 21 exahash. So but that's it. I think we'll call it a day. I think we've gone long enough. I think we've gone, oh, geez, like an hour and 40 minutes. This is going to be a long one. But yeah, we'll do one of these on Saturday, probably late in the afternoon, probably around 6, 7 o'clock. I'm doing a Twitter Spaces with the BTC mining guy. BTC mining stock guy, I think. Is his Twitter? I can't remember his Twitter handle. So we'll have that happening, and then we'll get into my videos as normally on Saturday as well. Okay, last question here. I'll do this one and then I'm done. What's your view on Bit Digital? Thanks. I think they're being undervalued, but we also need to see where their AI stuff is at as far as profits, right? So I think that's the big question there. If their profits are pretty good, I think the stock is going to definitely take off pretty well. Okay. All right. That's it, guys. Thank you as always. We'll see what happens later on. I think we're still, 22 days away from the halving event. If I'm not mistaken here, once that pops up, there it is, 22 days away from the halving event. We're getting closer. So things are going to get much more exciting and possibly much more volatile as well, with the miners going, kind of crazy after that, after some time potentially. So be patient. Obviously, do a lot of homework, do a lot of research, and we'll see where things go. I'm looking for good things for the miners, though, especially the ones that are growing and doing well going forward. Okay, so that's it. I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll do a regular video, and then, like I said, Saturday we'll do a video. Friday there might not be a video because it's Good Friday, I think. So market's gonna be closed, so we may not do a video on Friday. May take the day off. Okay, that is it. Thank you again. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.